Hello, today I'm going to show you a very simple trick for winning the game of dots and boxes. This trick is extremely simple yet obscure enough that your opponent won't see it coming. For those that don't know, dots and boxes is a very simple game. You have two players that take turns drawing lines on a board, and anytime someone draws in the fourth line surrounding a square, they get a point and they have to move again. But usually how a game will play out is players will draw lines on the board seemingly at random, and nobody's going to draw the third line surrounding a box because they don't want to give away a point to their opponent. Eventually, the game will reach a point where somebody has to move and give away points to their opponent. Like at this point, blue has to move here to give a square to red, red has to move there to give a square to blue, and then blue's going to give these squares to red. But now red has to move in one of these three long chains, at which point blue is going to win this game because they can take three of the squares, and then instead of taking the last two squares, they can end their turn by moving here. And now this is a double for red because they're going to make one move that gets both of these boxes at the same time, and then they're the one that has to move in the other chain. And now blue is going to do the same thing where they can take all of these boxes and then end their turn by giving away another double to red, where red will take these and then move in the last long chain, where at this point blue has no reason to hesitate. They can just take everything and they'll win the game. Now, the reason why blue won this game is because they knew the trick I'm about to show you, which is called the long chain rule. The long chain rule is that the first player wants there to be an even number of long chains, and the second player wants there to be an odd number of long chains. And when I use the phrase long chain, I'm talking about a chain of three or more boxes. So in this case, blue ended up winning this game because there were three long chains. I'm going to explain mathematically why the long chain rule works. If you're not interested, you can skip to the next part. But basically, there's a parity element to this game because blue was the last player to act, and they were able to get everything at the end, and they won. Notice that there were 38 turns in the game, and they were the last person to act. So if you're the second player, you want the number of turns in the game to be even, and if you're the first player, you want the number of turns in the game to be odd. So how can we determine how many turns there will be? Well, there are 60 edges on the board because each row has 5 edges and there are 6 rows. And then it's the same for the columns where there are 5 edges in each column and there are 6 columns for a total of 60 edges. But that doesn't mean there are 60 turns because anytime you fill in a box, your turn continues. So you have to think about the number of boxes. There are 25 boxes in a 5x5 board like this. However, the person that fills in the last box, that ends the game and that ends their turn. So technically there are only 24 boxes that prolong a person's turn. The other important thing to notice is that in the game that I just showed, blue gave away 2 doubles to red. And on each of those doubles, red made a move where they completed 2 boxes at the same time. So there actually weren't 24 moves that prolonged a person's turn, but there were 22 moves that prolonged a person's turn because you have to subtract the number of doubles because there are boxes that are also being completed at the same time as other boxes. So the number of turns is 60 minus the number of moves that prolong a person's turn, which is 24 minus the number of doubles, which means the number of turns is actually 36 plus the number of doubles. And in the game that I showed, there were 2 doubles because blue gave away this double to red and they gave away this double to red. And the third chain, they just took all to themselves. So it turns out that the number of doubles is actually 1 less than the number of long chains. So the total number of turns in the game is 35 plus the number of long chains, which in this case there were 3 long chains, so there were 38 turns. And this is kind of why the long chain rule works, because blue, or the second player, wanted there to be an odd number of long chains so that the total number of turns would be an even number, and so they would be the ones making the final turn. On the flip side, red would want there to be an even number of long chains so that the total number of turns would be odd, and they would be the ones making the last turn. So this makes the game a lot more interesting because instead of just randomly drawing lines on a board, now there's some actual purpose or strategy to it where you're trying to draw lines in such a way that you determine how many long chains that there will be. So even this early in the game, blue can make a move that helps them get what they want. In this case, they moved here, which you can see is starting to divide the board into three sections like this, with the top left, the top right, and then the bottom. And you can see that there are some long chains that are starting to form in these three sections. So that's an example of how you can win the game by making good decisions even at the beginning. There is one thing I want to point out real quick, which is that when it was blue's turn at this point, they moved here, which meant that red took both of these and then they had to move in one of the long chains. But if instead of blue moving here, if blue had moved here instead, that would have lost the game for blue, because then red could go here, and now another double has been created, which affects the parity. So now blue would go here, and then they would have to be the one to go in one of the long chains. And this would essentially give the game over to red. One other thing I want to quickly touch upon is rings, which don't function the same way as long chains. The reason why they don't function the same way is because when the board fills up, in this case it's blue's turn, they'll move in the ring, and instead of taking all four of the boxes in this ring, red can move here, effectively sacrificing all four of these boxes to blue, where they make two double moves and then they have to move in one of the long chains, and red is going to win. So the reason why the rings don't function the same way as the long chains is because there's two doubles inside of them, so they don't affect the parity of the game. In this case, there were two long chains, so red would end up winning this game. The last thing I want to point out is there's another tricky thing that a player can do to win this game. In this example, it looks like blue would want to move here in order to not give away any cells to red, but if red goes here, now blue has to give away cells to red anyways. So actually what blue should have done is they should have gone here. And this might seem like an unintuitive choice for blue because they're giving away a cell to red, but this cleverly divides the board into three long chains instead of two. And now it's red's turn and they have to move in one of these chains first. And this is a game that will be won by blue now. So that is a simple trick that you can use to win dots and boxes every single time. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.